Ladies and gentlemen, there is something many desire, yet do not realize how dangerous it can be. It enters quietly, often dressed as affection, but beneath the surface, it begins to corrode the bond between two souls, possessiveness. Having this is very, very dangerous. In the beginning of a relationship, when hearts are soft and emotions run deep, it feels good to be wanted, to be needed, so much that someone wants every piece of you. But the moment love becomes possession, it is no longer love, it becomes control. The scriptures teach us that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. 2 Corinthians 3:17. Yet in many relationships, people hold each other hostage, not with chains, but with guilt, suspicion, and fear. They believe if I do not control you, I might lose you. Possessiveness is one of the most misunderstood emotions in human relationships. At first glance, it appears to be love. It wears the face of affection, concern, and attachment. When someone says, I just want you for myself, it can sound romantic, even poetic. It feels flattering to be desired so deeply that someone wants you all to themselves. But this desire, if not recognized and purified, can quickly become toxic. It is a seed that grows in silence, unnoticed, until it chokes both the giver and the receiver of love. What makes possessiveness so dangerous is that it disguises itself as care. A man may tell his wife not to talk to other men, claiming, I'm just protecting you. A woman may read through her partner's messages and say, I'm only doing this because I love you. But this is not love. It is fear masquerading as affection. It is the voice of insecurity, whispering, I might lose them if I don't control them. When we examine this feeling honestly, we see that it does not come from love. It comes from a deep place of ego and fear. And fear, when it governs relationships, brings ruin. Love, in its purest form, is expansive. It allows the other to breathe, to be, to grow. But possessiveness is narrow. It tries to shrink the other into a box, to define their behavior, their thoughts, their time, their freedom. It says, you belong to me, but not in a spiritual or sacred way, in a way that seeks ownership. Yet no human soul can be owned, and any attempt to do so will result in suffering. Spiritually, this mindset reveals a lack of trust, not just in the partner, but in oneself and in God. The one who is possessive does not believe they are enough to be loved freely, so they grip tighter. They fear they will be replaced, so they control, but in doing so, they actually begin to push the other away. Just like a bird held too tightly will struggle to breathe and eventually perish, a person trapped in a possessive relationship loses their spirit. Their laughter becomes quieter. Their joy dims. Their individuality fades. And ironically, the one who was afraid of losing ends up destroying what they most wanted to keep. From a biblical perspective, this is entirely opposed to the nature of godly love. Love is described in Scripture not as demanding or dominating, but as gentle, patient, and kind. Love gives freely, expecting nothing in return. Even God, who has all authority, does not possessively force our devotion. He grants free will, knowing that love must be chosen, not demanded. So when we attempt to change someone's heart out of fear, we act contrary to divine love. Possessiveness also reveals an internal imbalance. Instead of focusing on building one's own character, spiritual strength, and self-worth, the possessive person seeks validation through control. They try to define their worth by their ability to keep someone theirs. This is a house built on sand. True security in a relationship does not come from how much we control the other person. It comes from the inner peace of knowing who we are and trusting in the honesty of the connection. The danger of possessiveness is that it kills the very thing it claims to protect. It stifles love by turning it into fear. It replaces trust with suspicion. freedom with imprisonment, joy with anxiety. And yet, because it often begins subtly and wears the mask of love, it is rarely confronted early. We must learn to recognize it, not in others first, but in ourselves. When we love, let us ask, is my love free or is it afraid? Am I honoring their spirit or trying to trap it? For only when we release the need to possess can we truly begin to love. One of the most spiritually dangerous illusions in a relationship is the belief that you own another person. This belief is subtle. It does not always announce itself loudly or aggressively. Often it begins with the words, "You are mine," spoken with passion, with affection, even with sincerity. But over time, this belief begins to take root in the soul, and what once felt like love turns into a quiet form of bondage. To believe you possess a person, emotionally, physically, spiritually, is to take the place of the Creator. And that is where the danger lies. No human being owns another. We were not created to be property. In the eyes of God, each person is a soul with purpose, with autonomy, with dignity. The breath that animates our lungs does not come from another person, it comes from the divine. And yet, in the context of romantic relationships, many people begin to believe that because they share their life with someone, they have the right to control them, define them, or claim them as their own. This mindset corrupts the very foundation of love. When a man starts to think, she belongs to me, so I get to decide who she talks to, where she goes, what she wears, he is no longer loving, he is dominating. When a woman says, he is mine, so he should never look at or speak to any other woman, it may feel like passion, but it is possessiveness in disguise. The soul cannot flourish under this kind of control. You can lock a person in your home, monitor their every move, and still lose their heart, because love cannot survive where freedom is denied. This belief in ownership also creates deep spiritual imbalance. It shifts the center of a person's worth away from God and toward another human being. In a healthy relationship, two souls walk side by side, both looking upward, toward growth, toward wisdom, toward God. But when one begins to believe, I am yours and you are mine, in an exclusive and controlling sense, the relationship becomes horizontal, self-centered. The spiritual light dims, and instead of serving one another in love, they begin to demand from one another out of need. Biblically, we are reminded of our true belonging. In Ezekiel 18:4 it is written, "Behold, all souls are mine. The soul of the Father as well as the soul of the Son is mine." That verse alone shatters the illusion of human ownership. You may share your life with someone. You may love them deeply, fiercely, honestly, but their soul, who they truly are, was never yours to own. It was entrusted to them by the Creator, just as your soul was entrusted to you. That's a sacred responsibility, not a possession. True love acknowledges this. It does not seek to dominate or own. It seeks to honor, to witness, to walk with. Just as God gives us freedom to make our own choices, to succeed and to fall, so too must we offer that same grace to those we love. That is how love grows, not through chains and rules, but through mutual respect and inner freedom. And here is the greatest irony. The more you try to own someone, the more they begin to pull away, because the soul knows, even if the mind does not, that it was not created to be caged. You may win obedience, you may win routine, but you will lose the essence of love. You will lose the trust, the joy, the spiritual connection. So if you truly love someone, remember this: you do not own them. You are a guest in their heart. A sacred guest, yes, but a guest nonetheless. And when you love as a guest, grateful, respectful, humble, then love becomes a sanctuary, not a prison. Only then can two people stand side by side, not as master and possession, but as soul and soul, each walking in freedom, each walking in light. Control is often mistaken for care. Many people believe that if they are able to manage, direct, or oversee every part of their partner's life, they are being responsible, loving, or protective. But the truth is, control in a relationship is not a virtue, it is a fear-based illusion. It comes from the deep insecurity that if we let go even slightly, things will fall apart. The need to control is not a reflection of strength or love, but a reflection of a wounded heart that has not yet learned how to trust. Control operates like a silent thief. It doesn't arrive with loud words or dramatic actions. It enters through small decisions and subtle behaviors. One person tells the other how to dress. Another begins to check messages, ask invasive questions, or create guilt when their partner spends time with others. It starts with, "I just worry about you," and becomes, "I don't want you doing anything unless I know." The mask is concern, but the motive is fear. When we try to control someone, we are not trusting them. We are trying to replace their freedom with our security. And that is a dangerous exchange, because real love cannot grow in a space where one person is constantly looking over the other's shoulder, planning their every move, or demanding their constant attention and obedience. That's not a relationship. It's a form of captivity. Spiritually, control reveals a lack of surrender. If we truly believe in divine order, if we trust that God is present in our relationships, then we must also accept that we cannot and should not manage everything. God does not force us to obey. He invites us. He instructs us. He lets us choose. Even when we stray, He does not use fear to pull us back. He uses truth, conviction, and love. So why do we think that we must force others to do what we want? The desire to control others is often a sign that we do not yet feel in control of ourselves. Relationships built on control are fragile. They may look steady from the outside, but internally, they are filled with resentment, anxiety, and emotional distance. One partner lives in fear of doing something wrong. The other lives in fear of being left or betrayed. Both become prisoners, one of control, the other of obedience. The connection becomes mechanical. There is no room for creativity, individuality, or spiritual growth, only rules, restrictions, and routines. And when the one being controlled eventually pushes back or pulls away, the controlling person often feels betrayed, even though the real betrayal was the loss of mutual respect from the very beginning. Love should feel like peace. It should feel like space to breathe, to speak, to be. When love becomes surveillance, it loses its sacredness. The Bible speaks of freedom often, and with great reverence, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Galatians 5:1. This is not just spiritual freedom, it reflects the way we are meant to live and relate to one another. In love, we must offer freedom, not because we don't care, but because we care in the right way. True care says, "I trust you enough to make your own decisions. I respect you enough to give you space. I love you enough to not hold you in a cage, even if that cage makes me feel safe." The illusion of control promises security, but delivers fear and distance. It takes away the very essence of love, choice. And without choice, there can be no love, only obedience. Letting go of control is not weakness. It is a courageous act of faith. Faith in the other person, faith in yourself, and most importantly, faith in the higher wisdom that holds all things together. When we release control, we create space for grace. And in that space, love becomes something holy, not something we own, but something we honor. Jealousy is often misunderstood. It pretends to be a sign of love, a sign that you care deeply for someone, that you cannot bear the thought of losing them. But beneath the surface, jealousy is not love, it is fear wrapped in emotion. It is insecurity disguised as passion. It is a poisoned fruit that grows when trust is absent and comparison is present. And once jealousy takes root in a relationship, it quietly begins to rot the connection from the inside out. At its core, jealousy is the voice that whispers, "I am not enough." It compares you to others. It creates suspicion where there is none. It fills your heart with worry that someone else might be better for your partner, more attractive, more successful, more interesting. And instead of focusing on building love, you begin focusing on guarding it, defending it, and watching it like a possession. But love is not meant to be guarded in fear. It is meant to be nurtured in freedom. Jealousy often leads people to act in ways they later regret. They accuse their partner without reason, check their phone, question every interaction, and read too deeply into casual conversations. These actions are not acts of love. They are reactions to fear, and fear cannot build a healthy relationship. It can only damage it. Every time jealousy is acted upon, a wall is built between two people. One becomes defensive, the other becomes resentful. Eventually, trust is replaced by suspicion, and affection is replaced by tension. The Bible gives us a clear picture of what love is and what it is not. In 1 Corinthians 13:4 it says, "Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy." Jealousy is the opposite of love's nature. It is impatient, unkind, and envious. When you love someone in a godly way, you do not see others as threats. You do not monitor them constantly or become angry at every small interaction they have. You recognize that love is a gift freely given, not a territory to be defended. Jealousy is also rooted in comparison. You begin to measure yourself against others, asking, "Am I better? Am I enough?" But comparison is a trap. It steals your peace and blinds you to your own value. The more you compare, the more you doubt, the more you fear. And the more you fear, the more you try to control. In that cycle, love cannot survive. It becomes conditional, strained, and transactional. Spiritually, jealousy shows a lack of trust not only in your partner but also in God. If you believe that God has brought someone into your life, then you must also trust that He knows what He's doing. Constant jealousy is saying, "I don't trust the person I love, and I don't trust the one who gave them to me." That belief robs you of peace and joy. It keeps your heart in a constant state of defense, waiting for betrayal, even where none exists. What's most tragic is that jealousy often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When someone feels constantly accused, constantly questioned, and never trusted, they begin to feel emotionally distant. They may not physically leave, but their heart slowly drifts away, and the very thing the jealous partner feared, loss, becomes reality, not because of an outside threat, but because of internal poison. To overcome jealousy, one must first turn inward. Heal the wound that says, "I am not enough." Silence the voice that says, "They will leave." Strengthen the trust in your relationship, and more importantly, your trust in God. You do not need to compete for what was meant for you. You do not need to fear losing what is rooted in love. Love does not control. Love does not accuse. Love does not envy. Love celebrates, trusts, and gives freedom. When you truly love someone, you feel joy when they shine, not fear. You offer your heart openly, not guarded. You rest, not worry. Because in real love, jealousy has no place. And where jealousy is allowed to live, love cannot grow. When fear becomes the foundation of a relationship, everything built upon it begins to crack. Fear of abandonment, fear of betrayal, fear of not being enough. These fears may remain unspoken, hidden beneath the surface, but they influence every conversation, every decision, and every moment of connection. What begins as love becomes survival. And in survival, there is no peace, only tension, uncertainty, and emotional exhaustion. Fear in a relationship causes people to act in ways they don't even recognize as harmful. A person who fears losing their partner may begin to compromise their own values, silence their own needs, and ignore red flags just to keep the peace. Another person, fearful of being hurt, might become emotionally distant, keeping their guard up at all times, never truly allowing love to enter. Both are driven by fear, but in opposite directions. One clings too tightly, the other withdraws too far. Neither feels safe, neither feels free. Fear warps love into something conditional. Instead of saying, I love you as you are, it says, I love you but only if you don't hurt me, only if you stay, only if you follow my rules. It makes the heart a courtroom, always judging, always calculating risk. And love cannot thrive in a courtroom. Love needs grace. It needs space to grow, to stumble, to recover. Fear does not allow this. Fear demands perfection or punishes vulnerability. Many relationships begin beautifully but slowly descend into fear-driven patterns. A partner doesn't answer the phone for a few hours. Suddenly, thoughts spiral. Are they cheating? Are they getting tired of me? That fear then leads to interrogation, accusations, or passive-aggressive behavior. The response is not rooted in the reality of what happened, it is rooted in the fear of what could happen. These fears become the lens through which everything is interpreted. A smile to a stranger becomes a threat. A delay in texting back becomes evidence of disinterest. And soon, love is lost. Not because someone changed, but because fear rewrote the entire story. The Bible repeatedly tells us, do not be afraid. In fact, one of the most profound truths is found in 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. This doesn't mean that love always feels safe or easy, but it does mean that true love offers a refuge from fear. When you love someone deeply and healthily, you are not constantly testing them or preparing for betrayal. You are walking with them in trust, believing the best, giving grace, and choosing faith over suspicion. Fear also limits emotional expression. A person afraid of being rejected may never say what they truly feel. They'll bottle up their thoughts, suppress their pain, and put on a mask of peace. But this creates a relationship full of unspoken wounds and unseen distance. The longer fear remains, the more it silences authenticity. And when authenticity dies, intimacy dies with it. Healing from fear in a relationship starts with inner work. Ask yourself, what am I truly afraid of? And where is that fear coming from? Past pain, insecurity, lack of trust in God. When we face our fears honestly, we can begin to dismantle them. And once we do, we can love from a place of strength, not desperation. We can give space instead of pressure. We can speak gently instead of accuse. We can choose presence over paranoia. A relationship built on love must not be ruled by fear. It must be rooted in truth, watered by trust, and protected by peace. Fear may knock at the door, but we don't have to let it in. Because when two people are committed to growth, honesty, and faith, fear loses its grip, and love, real love, is finally free to take root and flourish. There is a hidden, often unspoken danger that silently poisons relationships: the lack of spiritual discipline. Many couples build relationships on emotions, attraction, shared interests, or goals, but neglect the spiritual foundation that gives those connections depth, clarity, and resilience. Without spiritual discipline, a relationship may appear stable on the outside, yet it remains deeply vulnerable within. Like a tree without strong roots, it might grow tall, but will topple when the winds of life begin to blow. Spiritual discipline is not just about religion. It is about being anchored in truth. It is about submitting your ego, desires, and fears to something higher than yourself. In a relationship, it means bringing humility into every conversation, inviting peace into every conflict, and keeping purpose alive in moments of doubt or distance. Without that grounding, couples are easily pulled into cycles of pride, selfishness, emotional chaos, or spiritual blindness. A person who lacks spiritual discipline becomes reactive rather than reflective. They respond to offense with attack. They meet discomfort with avoidance. They place blame quickly and rarely look inward. When a relationship is guided only by emotion and impulse, it becomes a battlefield of egos. Every argument turns into a competition. Every mistake becomes a wound that is never healed but simply buried. Spiritual discipline, on the other hand, teaches stillness. It teaches one to pause, to examine, to pray, to forgive. Many relationships fall apart, not because of lack of love, but because of lack of alignment. Two people may love each other deeply, But if they are not aligned in values, discipline, and spiritual maturity, their paths eventually separate. They begin to speak different languages, not just with their mouths but with their hearts. One seeks peace, the other seeks power. One wants healing, the other wants to win. And without a shared spiritual compass, they become lost, no matter how much they care for one another. In scripture, we are told, "Two are better than one." But a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. Ecclesiastes 4. That third strand is the presence of God. When a relationship includes spiritual discipline, daily prayer, reflection, moral accountability, humility before a higher power, it gains a strength that emotion alone can never offer. You learn to love with patience. You learn to forgive even when you are still hurting. You learn to ask, not just what do I want, but what is right. Spiritual discipline also shapes character. It teaches consistency. Many people start strong in relationships, showing love, attention, and commitment. But over time, without discipline, they grow careless, distracted, or distant. They lose their sense of purpose and begin to drift. Discipline is what reminds you daily of the vows you made, the values you uphold, and the kind of person you want to be, not just when it feels easy, but especially when it doesn't. Without this anchor, temptation becomes stronger. Disrespect becomes easier. Dishonesty becomes normal. But when spiritual discipline is active, the heart remains guarded, not by suspicion, but by principle. You do not remain faithful just because of your partner. You remain faithful because of your character, your devotion, and your fear of dishonoring something greater than yourself. In the end, love without discipline is fragile. Passion fades, beauty changes, circumstances shift, but the relationship built on spiritual discipline remains steady because it is not controlled by the emotions of the day. It is led by eternal truth. When both partners are committed to their own growth, self-control, and connection to the divine, they not only protect the relationship from destruction, they transform it into something sacred. So do not neglect your spiritual discipline. Pray, reflect, repent, and grow. For what you do in secret, the unseen habits of your soul, will either strengthen your relationship, silently or slowly destroy it. The choice is always in your hands. What destroys relationships is not always loud or obvious. It is often the quiet things, the unchecked ego, the need to control, the deep-rooted fear, the subtle jealousy, and the lack of spiritual discipline. These inner conditions do not appear all at once. They creep in slowly, disguised as love, concern, or passion. But left unaddressed, they erode trust, distort love, and suffocate the sacred space 2 souls were meant to share. We were not created to live in fear, control, or insecurity. We were created to walk in truth, to love in freedom, and to grow together in spiritual maturity. When a relationship loses this foundation, what remains is a fragile shell of what could have been, a connection built on conditions rather than covenant. So ask yourself, not just who am I with, but who am I becoming in this relationship? Is your heart being stretched, or is it shrinking? Are you growing in peace, patience, and wisdom, or merely surviving in anxiety and control? The most dangerous thing you can bring into a relationship is not another person, not distance, not disagreement. It is the unexamined self, the self that refuses to heal, the self that loves with conditions, the self that fears more than it trusts. Therefore, return to discipline, practice humility, release control, silence jealousy, and above all, do not allow fear to become the voice that shapes your love. For where fear rules, love cannot stay. As it is written, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Proverbs. If you truly want to protect your relationship, start there by protecting what flows from within. And when you master that, there is no danger that can destroy what you and your partner have built. Not because you are perfect, but because what binds you is stronger than what tries to break you.